The Perry Scheme by Minnie Adams, submitted on June 10, 2012. The Perry Scheme is for the Student Development Theory class taught by Karen A. Myers, PhD, at St. Louis University in the summer 2012 online class. This slideshow talks about forms of intellectual and ethical development in the college years, a scheme, by William G. Perry, Jr. The abstract covers the Perry scheme, which is a well-known identification of sequences of approaches to learning called positions, which include dualism, multiplicity, contextual relativism, and commitment within relativism. William G. Perry, Jr. was the founder and chair of the Bureau of Study Council at Harvard University. Perry was born in Paris in 1913. He received his B.S. and M.S. from Harvard. He published a translation of Homer's Iliad and taught at Williams College, where he was assistant dean as well. Perry also worked at Harvard University as professor, counselor, administrator, and founder-director of Bureau of Study Council. Bill Perry is known by his family and friends, was a great storyteller and told anecdotes. He was also a sailor, fisherman, designer, carpenter, and conservative of the Massachusetts Marsh area. He was husband, father, grandfather, friend, and he passed of pneumonia in 1998. At the Bureau of Study Council, Perry was asked, "How can you stand listening all day to students' problems?" He responded, "I don't listen to their problems. I listen to their courage." The origin of the story: how does diversity and pluralism affect the typical college student's development experience? Is college growth comparable to childhood growth as described by Piaget? The student's interpretive evolution of their lives and salient experiences during 4 years in a liberal arts college evolved in time. Perry began with "in the beginning," the analogy to Genesis, comparing the students to the Garden of Eden experience. For these Harvard and Radcliffe students, Perry compared their learning as with approaching the tree of knowledge, and by eating from the tree of knowledge, they gained knowledge of good and evil. And in doing so, they saw authority and right and wrong as an evolutionary process in their intellect, and it caused them to have questions as they grew during the college experience. The sampling of students from Harvard Radcliffe included the classes of 58, 62, and 63. There were over 464 interviews, of which 84 were complete 4-year sets. The interviewer were counselors from the Study Council Bureau who realized that they had to ask open-ended questions, and the question that they landed with was, "Why don't you start with whatever stands out for you about the year?" The observers were 6 Harvard graduate students who were given instructions as to how to carry out the experiment. There were finding limits that included the subject sample, oral interviews, and the operations related to data derived from the scheme. Perry developed 9 positions which he was able to test using this scheme. The dualism was positions 1 and 2. Position 1 was about absolute truth. This position didn't actually exist in the experiment. It was not manifested, whereas an individual does not question truth, but they take it as an absolute, and authority is absolute and unquestioned. Position 2 was a little bit beyond that, who they believe that there are people who also believe different things, but whatever they believe is wrong, because what we believe is right and good, and what they believe is wrong and bad. Next was multiplicity, positions 3 and 4. In position 3, right, wrong, and not yet known would be determined at some point in the future. The confrontation and coping with diversity and multiples in virtually everything. In position 4, students realize we will never know for sure. What is most important in one's own thinking was the thing that stood out for them, and they were encouraged by one another and by teachers to do your own thing, or anything goes, because you never know for sure. Relativism, procedural knowledge were positions 5 and 6. Position 5 was contextual relativism, where students learn that all proposed solutions are supported by reasons, and so you have to look at them within context and relative to the support of those reasons. Some solutions are better than others, depending on context, and students' task was to learn how to evaluate those solutions. Position 6 was one of pre-commitment. Students were seeing the necessity of making choices and committing to a solution, where before they didn't have to take on such a responsibility. Commitment, constructed knowledge, positions 7, 8, and 9. Here, students are finding that integration of knowledge is something that's learned from others with personal experience and reflection. So position 7, they saw that commitment, students must make a commitment. In position 8, they moved further in making a commitment and found that once they made a commitment, there were going to be challenges to their commitment, and student experiences their implications of what making a commitment meant. So they see their responsibility issues coming up. And in position 9, students find that commitment is an ongoing, ever unfolding process. On the other hand, alternatives to growth and development were deflection. When students became too caught up or stressed out with a situation, they would temporize. Temporizing was a pause in growth over an academic year where a student hesitates to take the next step. You see this quite often where students kind of just stop what they're doing. They say, I'm just not ready yet. Another alternative to growth was retreat. When a dramatic regression that requires an enemy or fight, when students might find themselves at battle with their teachers' positions or with their peers as well. And escape was another deflection, where the student exploits the opportunity for detachment and offered by multiplicity and relativism to deny responsibility through passive or opportunistic alienation. So rather than take advantage of what they have learned about multiplicity, context, and so forth, they deny responsibility, make no commitments, and become passive, and they also alienate themselves in their environment. All of these types of deflections can lead to the students having to retrack and start over in learning the positions that they had previously learned, if that happens. The questions that were derived from reading this book were, who are the interviewers? Can their procedure be replicated? What are their biases? Are they not seen as authority by the students? Perry did insinuate that this could be a problem. How does this affect the sampling? Is Harvard-Radcliffe really a typical college environment? Other questions include, how does diversity in today's definition compare with the results that they received? What questions did the students ask of the researchers? And would this experiment be possible today? If not, why not? And if so, how would it happen? And why would it be possible? There were comments also made about the book. Perry describes the sampling as diverse because it is composed of students from many different schools, pre-civil rights, pre-gender rights era. Perry's own empathy towards the learner and the condition of the learner helps to explain how he might be able to listen well and achieve these results. It is interesting that these tenets are so well accepted by educational researchers. The non-traditional or now traditional student is becoming the majority of students attending colleges these days. It would be interesting to see how these positions will be realized in time as this learning community becomes so much more diverse and much more reflective of the community as a whole. Our thoughts about the book: we feel that Perry's scheme at the time was groundbreaking, but in 2012, it is reflective of critical thinking that more people are aware of. As educators, we try to instill this more advanced method of thinking in all academic settings. It's a natural progression of learning which allows a student to become an independent learner. The language of the students' answers is so different from the language used by Perry. It would have been helpful to see how the consistencies of language could have been adopted by the researchers, so that to see if the meaning of the students of similar language could have been used in the book. It's clear that Perry and others take on the role of the authority by virtue of running the experiment. As Perry admits, the act of collecting data alters the data, and that is always to be considered in analysis. This study was about identifying the positions, stages of the progression of growth in 17 to 22-year-olds. Its relevance has led to conference seminars and other papers that attempt to follow the procedures to verify and further test these results, i.e. the Perry Network and the Center for the Study of Intellectual Development. In closing, we'd like to give an ode to Bill Perry, which has come from the counselors of the Study Bureau Council. He's not the very picture of a modern-day psychologist. No tests, no pipes, no jargon, for no system anthropologist. And if he is a poet just as much as he's a scientist, it's cause to him the theory's always smaller than the client is. In closing, we hope that these references will be helpful to you for further study, and we would like to